There are stories from war that never make the news. Stories that get buried in classified files or simply forgotten because they don't fit the narrative people want to hear. This is one of those stories. My name is Marcus Chen, and I served 3 tours in Afghanistan as a combat medic. I've saved lives. I've held dying soldiers in my arms. I've seen things that still wake me up at night, sweating and reaching for a weapon that isn't there. But this story isn't about combat. It's about what happened after. About betrayal at the highest levels. About how the government tried to silence us. And about how we fought back in the only way we could, by telling the truth. It started on a mission that officially never happened. We were a small team, 8 soldiers, sent into a remote valley near the Pakistan border. Our orders were simple. Locate and extract a high-value target, an intelligence asset who'd been feeding information about insurgent networks. The mission was classified. No media embedded, no official record. Just us, the night, and the mountains. Everything went wrong from the start. Our intelligence was bad. The coordinates were off by nearly 2 miles. When we reached the compound where our asset was supposedly hiding, we found a wedding celebration instead. 50, maybe 60 civilians, families, children. Music and laughter echoing off the mountain walls. Our team leader, Lieutenant Rodriguez, immediately called for extraction.
"This is wrong," he said over the radio. "We've got civilians everywhere. We need to abort and regroup."
But command came back with different orders.
"Maintain position. Intelligence confirms target is present. Proceed with extraction."
Rodriguez argued. He told them what we were seeing. He asked for confirmation, for updated intelligence, for anything that would justify what they were asking us to do. The response was cold and final.
"You have your orders. Execute the mission."
What happened next is something that still haunts every one of us who was there that night. We approached the compound cautiously. Rodriguez divided us into 2 teams, one to secure the perimeter, one to enter and identify the target. I was with the entry team, along with Sergeant Williams, Corporal Jackson, and Private Morrison. The moment we entered that courtyard, I knew something was terribly wrong. These weren't insurgents. These were farmers, shopkeepers, teachers. The men were dressed in traditional wedding clothes. The women were celebrating separately in another section of the compound. Children were running around, playing games, completely oblivious to the armed soldiers suddenly in their midst. The music stopped. Everyone froze. I saw the fear in their eyes, the same fear I'd seen countless times before, but this time it felt different. This time, we were the ones in the wrong place. Williams tried to communicate, using the few Pashto phrases we'd learned. He was asking for the target by name. But the responses we got were confusion, not recognition. No one knew who we were talking about. Then the shooting started. To this day, I don't know who fired first. Maybe it was one of the wedding guests who panicked and grabbed a rifle. Maybe it was Morrison, who was young and scared and had his finger too tight on the trigger. Maybe it was someone outside the compound entirely. But once it started, it didn't stop. 7 people were hit in the first burst of gunfire. 3 of them were children. I'm a medic. My job is to save lives. But in that moment, in that chaos, with bullets flying and people screaming and blood spreading across the dusty ground, I couldn't save anyone. Rodriguez screamed for cease fire. He physically grabbed Morrison and slammed him against a wall, knocking the rifle from his hands.
Williams was yelling into his radio, calling for immediate medical evacuation, for backup, for someone to tell us what to do. But the order that came back from command was the one that changed everything. Sanitize the scene, eliminate all witnesses, mission is compromised. No survivors.
Rodriguez stared at the radio like it had just spoken in a language he didn't understand.
Say again,
he whispered. You heard the order, Lieutenant. Sanitize the scene. No witnesses, no evidence. You were never there. That's when Rodriguez made a choice that would define the rest of all our lives. He threw the radio down and looked at each of us.
We're not doing that,
he said quietly. We're going to save as many of these people as we can, and then we're going to tell everyone what really happened here. We worked through the night trying to save the people we'd just wounded. I used every bit of medical training I had. Williams and Jackson helped me triage the injured, while Rodriguez and the others secured the compound perimeter, not against external threats, but to protect the civilians from any follow-up order that might come through. 3 of the children died despite everything I tried. 2 men succumbed to their wounds before morning. The others survived, but they'd carry those scars forever. Physical and otherwise. As dawn broke over those mountains, we faced a choice. We could follow orders, eliminate the evidence, and go home as if nothing had happened, or we could do the right thing and face whatever consequences came with it. Rodriguez gathered us together.
I'm going on record, he said. I'm filing a full incident report. I'm going to tell them exactly what happened here. The bad intelligence, the civilian casualties, the order to sanitize, everything.
They'll destroy you, Williams said quietly.
You know they will. Probably, Rodriguez agreed. But I can live with that.
What I can't live with is covering this up and pretending it never happened. Morrison, the youngest of us, was crying. I didn't mean to shoot. I didn't mean for any of this.
I know, Rodriguez interrupted gently, and that's exactly why this needs to be reported. Because you were put in an impossible situation based on faulty intelligence and illegal orders. That's on them, not you. We all agreed to back Rodriguez's report. Every single one of us would tell the truth, whatever it cost us. The extraction helicopter came at 0600. We loaded the wounded civilians on first, then climbed aboard ourselves. The pilot asked no questions. He'd learned not to on missions like these. The moment we touched down at base, everything changed. Rodriguez was immediately separated from the team and taken into a closed-door meeting with command. The rest of us were confined to quarters and told not to speak to anyone about the mission, not even each other. 2 days later, Rodriguez was gone. Transferred, they told us, reassigned to a desk job in Germany. We never got to say goodbye. We never got to coordinate our stories or make sure we were all on the same page. That's when the official narrative began to take shape. According to the report that filtered down to us, our mission had been a complete success. We'd eliminated a high-value insurgent target. There had been some collateral damage. That's the term they used, collateral damage. But it was justified and proportional to the threat. The civilians who died were determined to be combatants based on intelligence gathered at the scene. It was all lies, every single word of it. Williams tried to file his own report, contradicting the official story. It was rejected on procedural grounds. Jackson went to the base chaplain, trying to find someone who would listen. The chaplain reported him for psychological distress, and Jackson was put on medical leave pending psychiatric evaluation. Morrison couldn't handle it. 3 weeks after the mission, he tried to take his own life. He survived, but he was medically discharged and sent home.
Last I heard, he was living with his parents and couldn't hold down a job for more than a few months at a time. One by one, they isolated us, separated us, silenced us. I was the last one still on active duty at that base when a man in civilian clothes showed up at my quarters. No name, no identification, just a briefcase and a cold smile. "Sergeant Chen," he said.
"We need to have a conversation about your future in the military, and about what you remember, or don't remember, about a certain mission that never officially happened." That conversation lasted 3 hours. By the end of it, I understood exactly what they were offering, my career and my silence, in exchange for making this all go away. I also understood what would happen if I refused. I signed their papers. I took their deal. And for 18 months, I kept my mouth shut and hated myself a little more each day. I finished my tour. I came home to San Diego. I got a job as a paramedic, thinking maybe I could do some good in the world to balance out what I'd been part of. I tried to move on with my life, but some things don't let you move on. I'd wake up at night seeing those children's faces. I'd be in the middle of my shift, treating a car accident victim, and suddenly I'd be back in that compound, trying to stop bleeding that wouldn't stop, listening to screams I couldn't silence. My girlfriend at the time, Sarah, tried to help. She'd hold me when the nightmares came. She'd listen when I was ready to talk. But there was a limit to what I could tell her. A limit imposed by the papers I'd signed and the threats that had been made. "Whatever it is you're carrying," she told me one night after a particularly bad episode, "you need to let it out. It's destroying you, Marcus. I can see it happening." "I can't," I whispered. "If I talk, they'll destroy me. My career, my reputation, maybe worse." "They're already destroying you," she said. "You're just letting them do it slowly." She left 3 months later. I didn't blame her. Who wants to be with someone who's being eaten alive by secrets they can't share? But her words stayed with me. They echoed in my head during the long night shifts, the quiet hours when I had nothing to do but think. Then, 2 years after that mission, I got a phone call that changed everything. "Is this Marcus Chen?" The voice was familiar, but older, rougher. "Who is this?" "It's Rodriguez. Don't hang up. I need 5 minutes of your time." My hands started shaking. "Lieutenant, where are you? What happened to you?" "What happened is they tried to bury me. Desk job in Germany turned into a psychiatric evaluation, turned into a medical discharge for PTSD. They made sure I'd never be credible if I tried to speak out." "Then why are you calling?" "Because I found Williams and Jackson. They're alive, they're angry, and they're ready to talk. We want to go public with what happened that night, all of us together. They can't silence all of us if we speak at once." My heart was racing. "They'll destroy us." "They're already destroying us, Marcus. One silent day at a time. Williams is drinking himself into an early grave. Jackson can't hold a job. Morrison," his voice broke. "Morrison tried again last month. He's in a psychiatric hospital. This silence is costing us everything anyway. At least if we speak, it'll mean something." "How?" I asked. "How do we even do this? The media won't touch it without proof, and all the proof is classified." "I kept copies," Rodriguez said quietly. "Before they transferred me, I made copies of everything: the original mission brief, the radio transcripts, the photos I took at the scene, everything. It's insurance I never thought I'd have to use, but now I think it's time." That's treason. They'll put you in prison. Maybe. Or maybe enough people will care about the truth that they won't be able to. But I'm doing this either way, Marcus. With or without you. I'm calling because you deserve the chance to tell your story, to stop carrying this alone. I looked around my small apartment, at the bottles of sleeping pills on my nightstand, at the pictures on the wall from a life that felt like it belonged to someone else. When? I asked. We're meeting in 3 days. Denver. There's a journalist there, someone we trust, who's willing to listen. Will you come? I thought about Sarah's words, about the children's faces that haunted my dreams, about Morrison in a hospital bed, about all of us carrying this weight separately when we could have been carrying it together. Yeah, I said. I'll be there. Her name was Rebecca Torres, and she was nothing like I expected. I'd imagined some hard-nosed investigative reporter, someone who'd see us as just another story to exploit. But Rebecca was different. She'd been an embedded journalist in Iraq for 2 years. She understood what combat did to people. She understood the difference between the official story and the truth. We met in a quiet conference room at a veterans organization office. Rodriguez had arranged everything through contacts he'd maintained despite his discharge. When I walked in, I saw Williams and Jackson for the first time in 2 years. They looked like ghosts of the men I'd served with. Williams had put on 50 pounds and had the red-faced look of someone who drank too much. Jackson was rail-thin, nervous, his eyes constantly darting to the exits. Rodriguez looked tired, older than his 38 years. But when we saw each other, something shifted. We weren't alone anymore. We weren't carrying this by ourselves. Rebecca let us talk first. For 3 hours we told her everything. We took turns filling in details, correcting each other's memories, piecing together the full picture of what had happened that night. She recorded it all, but she also just listened. When Williams broke down talking about the children, she waited patiently. When Jackson described the order to sanitize the scene, she didn't interrupt with questions. She let us tell it our way. Finally, when we'd said everything we needed to say, she spoke. I believe you, she said simply. Every word. And I want to help you tell this story. But you need to understand what you're up against. The military will deny everything. They'll say you're disgruntled former soldiers making up stories for attention. They'll question your mental health, your credibility, your motives. They have an entire apparatus designed to discredit people like you. We know, Rodriguez said, but we have proof. He pulled out a thick folder. Inside were copies of documents, photographs, radio transcripts, everything he'd managed to save before his transfer. Rebecca went through them carefully, her journalist's eye assessing their authenticity. When she looked up, her expression was serious. This is solid evidence, but it's also probably classified. Publishing this could bring federal charges against all of you, maybe against me too. Are you saying you won't do it? I asked. No. I'm saying you need to be certain. Once this goes public, there's no taking it back. Your lives will change forever. Some people will call you heroes. Others will call you traitors. The government will almost certainly prosecute. You need to be ready for all of that. We looked at each other. 4 men who'd been through hell together and then been forced to suffer separately. I'm ready, Rodriguez said. Me too, Williams added. Yeah, Jackson agreed. They all looked at me. The last one to commit. I thought about Morrison in that hospital, about the children who died because of bad intelligence and illegal orders.
about all the other soldiers who might face similar situations if we stayed silent.
"Let's do it," I said. Rebecca nodded. "Okay, here's how this will work. I'll write the story, but I need to verify everything independently. That means I'll need to contact other sources, review public records, maybe even reach out to the Pentagon for comment. This process will take weeks, maybe months, and during that time, you all need to be very careful. Don't talk about this to anyone, don't post about it online, don't give them any reason to come after you before the story breaks." "What about Morrison?" I asked. "He's part of this too." "I'll try to interview him if his doctors clear it," Rebecca said. "But his testimony might actually be the most powerful. The fact that this experience broke him so badly that he tried to end his life, that shows the human cost of these cover-ups." Over the next 2 months, Rebecca worked tirelessly on the story. She verified every detail she could. She obtained corroborating evidence from other sources. She built an airtight case that the Pentagon couldn't simply dismiss. And then, on a cold Tuesday morning in November, the story broke. The headline read, "The Mission That Never Happened: How the Pentagon Covered Up Civilian Deaths and Silenced Soldiers." Within hours, it had been shared thousands of times. News outlets around the world were picking it up. Members of Congress were calling for investigations, and our phones started ringing. All of our phones. The backlash was immediate and brutal. Within 24 hours of the story breaking, the Pentagon issued an official statement. They claimed our allegations were unsubstantiated and irresponsible, that we were troubled veterans seeking attention, and that the mission in question had been conducted according to all applicable laws and rules of engagement. They released their own version of the incident report, heavily redacted, of course, that painted a completely different picture. According to them, we'd engaged a confirmed hostile target, taken appropriate defensive action, and conducted ourselves professionally throughout. The fact that their report contradicted itself in several places didn't seem to matter. It was official. It was from the Pentagon. Therefore, in many people's eyes, it must be true. But we weren't alone this time. Other veterans started coming forward, people who'd been in similar situations, who'd witnessed similar cover-ups, who'd been silenced by similar threats. Rebecca's story had opened a door that the military couldn't close. A congressman from Michigan, himself a veteran, called for a full congressional investigation. A retired general went on national television and confirmed that the practices we described were not only possible, but common. Human rights organizations demanded an independent inquiry. The military tried to isolate us again. They threatened us with prosecution for releasing classified information. They questioned our mental health. They dug into our backgrounds, looking for anything they could use to discredit us. They found plenty. Williams's drinking problem, Jackson's employment history, my relationship failures. They leaked all of it to friendly media outlets, painting us as unstable, unreliable, damaged. And you know what? They were right. We were damaged. That's what happens when you send soldiers into impossible situations and then abandon them when things go wrong. But damaged doesn't mean dishonest. And the proof we'd provided couldn't be explained away by our personal problems. 3 weeks after the story broke, Morrison called me. It was the first time we'd spoken since the mission. "I saw the article," he said. His voice was quiet, medicated. "I'm glad you guys did it. I wanted to be part of it, but I couldn't. I'm sorry." "Don't apologize," I told him. "You surviving is enough. You being alive to see this come out, that matters."
They're saying we're liars, that we made it all up. I know, but we've got proof. And we've got each other's backs this time. That's the difference.
Marcus? Do you think it'll change anything? Really? I didn't have an answer for that. Not then. The congressional hearing happened 2 months later. All 4 of us testified. Rodriguez, Williams, Jackson, and me. Morrison submitted written testimony but wasn't stable enough to appear in person. We sat at that long table, cameras everywhere, politicians posing their careful questions. And we told the truth. The whole truth. Everything we'd been carrying for years. The Pentagon officials who testified after us denied everything. They claimed we were mistaken, confused, traumatized into creating false memories. But they couldn't explain Rodriguez's documents. They couldn't explain the timeline discrepancies. They couldn't explain why they'd separated and silenced us so efficiently if nothing wrong had happened. The hearing lasted 3 days, and when it was over, we didn't know if we'd accomplished anything. The committee promised a full report. The media promised continued coverage. But promises are easy. Results are harder. We left Washington not knowing if we'd made any difference at all. Then, 2 weeks later, Rodriguez called me again. "Turn on the news," he said. I did, and there it was. Pentagon announces policy changes following congressional hearing on combat incident cover-ups. It wasn't everything we wanted. It wasn't justice for those children. It wasn't accountability for the officers who'd given illegal orders. But it was something. New protocols for reporting civilian casualties, independent review boards for contested incidents, protections for service members who report wrongdoing. Small changes, but changes nonetheless. 3 years have passed since that story broke. 3 years since we decided to tell the truth instead of carrying the lies. The Pentagon never pressed charges. They couldn't, not without a trial that would expose even more of what they were trying to hide. Instead, they just let it fade. The news cycle moved on. People forgot. That's what always happens. But some things didn't fade. Rodriguez wrote a book about his experiences. It didn't become a bestseller, but it found the people who needed to read it. He speaks at veterans events now, advocating for reform, helping other soldiers who've been silenced find their voices. Williams got sober. It took 2 relapses and a lot of support from the VA, but he's been clean for 18 months now. He works as a counselor for other veterans dealing with addiction and PTSD. Turns out surviving your demons makes you good at helping others fight theirs. Jackson finally found stability. He works for a veterans nonprofit, helping recently discharged soldiers transition to civilian life. He's married now, has a daughter. When he talks about her, you can see the hope in his eyes, the belief that maybe the next generation won't have to carry the same burdens we did. Morrison is still struggling. Some wounds don't heal, no matter how much truth you tell or how much support you get. But he's alive, and last month he called to tell me he'd started painting, creating art about his experiences, finding a different way to tell his story when words are too hard. As for me, I'm still a paramedic. I still save lives when I can. But I also speak at military ethics conferences now. I talk to ROTC cadets about the reality of moral choices in combat. I try to prepare the next generation for the impossible situations they might face. And I sleep better now. Not perfectly, I don't think I'll ever sleep perfectly again. But better, because I'm not carrying those secrets alone anymore. The mission that night still haunts me. Those children still visit my dreams. But now, when I wake up, I don't feel the crushing weight of silence. I told the truth. I faced the consequences, and I survived. Rebecca still keeps in touch. She won an award for her reporting on our story. But more importantly, she opened a door for other stories like ours. Other soldiers have come forward. Other cover-ups have been exposed. The conversation we started is still happening, even if most people aren't paying attention anymore. That's the thing about truth in war. It's not dramatic like in the movies. There's no moment where the bad guys are definitively defeated and everything is fixed. It's smaller than that, quieter. It's Williams waking up sober one more day. It's Jackson watching his daughter sleep peacefully. It's Morrison finishing a painting. It's Rodriguez helping another silenced soldier find their voice. It's new policies that might prevent another team from facing the same impossible situation we did. It's officers who now think twice before giving illegal orders. It's junior soldiers who know they have the right and the responsibility to question commands that violate the laws of war. Small victories, quiet changes, not the stuff that makes headlines or inspires movies, but real nonetheless. The media won't cover most of these stories. They're not dramatic enough. They don't fit neat narratives about heroes and villains. They're messy and complicated and uncomfortable. They're also true. And sometimes, in a world full of official narratives and convenient lies, that's the most important thing you can offer. Uncomfortable, complicated truth. We can't change what happened that night in those mountains. We can't bring back the children who died. We can't erase the trauma or undo the betrayal we experienced from our own command. But we can tell the truth about it. We can make sure it's remembered. We can fight to ensure other soldiers don't face the same abandonment when they try to do the right thing. That's not revenge. It's not even justice. Not really. But it's something. And sometimes something is enough. If you take nothing else from this story, understand this. The hardest battles aren't always the ones fought with weapons. Sometimes the hardest battle is deciding whether to speak or stay silent, whether to protect yourself or protect the truth, whether to go along with the comfortable lie or stand up for the uncomfortable reality. Every soldier faces versions of these choices. So does every person in any organization, any family, any situation where power imbalances exist and truth becomes inconvenient. The military taught me a lot. Discipline, teamwork, how to function under pressure, how to save lives under impossible conditions. But the most important lesson I learned came after the military tried to silence me. Your integrity is the only thing that's truly yours. Your rank can be stripped. Your career can be ended. Your reputation can be destroyed. But your integrity, that's yours to keep or surrender. No one can take it from you. You can only give it away. When Rodriguez chose to file that honest report, he gave up his career. When Williams and Jackson and I chose to support him, we accepted that our military futures were over. When Morrison tried to carry the burden alone, it nearly destroyed him. But when we finally came together and told the truth, despite all the threats and consequences, we got something back that we'd lost. Ourselves. Our sense of who we were. Our ability to look in the mirror without shame. That's not something you'll hear about on the news. The news wants simple stories, good guys and bad guys, clear victories and definitive defeats. But real life is more complicated than that. Real life is 4 damaged soldiers sitting in a conference room, deciding that truth matters more than comfort. It's a journalist who risks her career to tell a story that powerful people want buried. It's small policy changes that might save future soldiers from facing the same betrayals we did. The children who died that night are still gone. Nothing we did brought them back. Nothing we said changed that terrible reality. But their deaths aren't buried in classified files anymore. They're not erased from history. They're part of the record now. And maybe, just maybe, that means they mattered. That their lives and deaths meant something beyond being collateral damage in a mission that officially never happened. I think about them often, about what they might have become if they'd lived, about the futures that were stolen from them by bad intelligence and worse decisions. And I think about all the other untold stories out there. The missions that get buried, the soldiers who get silenced, the truths that powerful institutions would prefer stayed hidden. This story isn't unique. It's not special. It's just one of thousands of similar stories that happen every time we go to war. Most of them will never be told. Most of the soldiers carrying them will suffer in silence, convinced that speaking up would change nothing. Maybe they're right. Maybe individual voices don't matter against massive institutional power. But then I remember that Tuesday morning when Rebecca's story broke. I remember the other veterans who came forward. I remember the congressional hearing and the policy changes and Williams getting sober and Jackson holding his daughter and Morrison still being alive to paint his pain into art. And I think maybe one voice doesn't matter, but 4 voices together, 10, 100, maybe that's how change actually happens. Not with dramatic revelations that fix everything at once, but with quiet truths that accumulate until they can't be ignored anymore. The media won't cover most of these stories, but we can tell them anyway, to each other, to the next generation, to anyone willing to listen. Because the truth is worth telling, even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable. That's the real war story the news won't show you. That sometimes the bravest thing a soldier can do isn't fighting the enemy. It's standing up to their own side and saying, "This is wrong, and I won't be silent about it anymore." That's what we did. That's what we'll keep doing. And if you ever face a similar choice, in the military or anywhere else in life, I hope you'll remember our story. I hope you'll know that speaking up is possible, that the truth matters, that you don't have to carry impossible burdens alone. The cost might be high, the consequences might be severe, but the cost of silence is higher still. That's the lesson we learned. That's the truth we carry. And that's the story the media will never fully tell.